Welcome back everybody, Johnny here. Today we will be tackling Season 9B and Season 10 of SpongeBob SquarePants. The previous video was about defending what people say are the worst seasons of the franchise. But now, I guess we will do some praising. If you watched the previous video, you know my opinion about Season 9A, and that I'm glad it was stopped being produced. Then the second movie came around, a lot of old and brand new writers and producers were working now on new episodes. And these new episodes in 9B really felt like classic episodes from the classic era of seasons 1 to 5. It was so great to see, and I'm gonna expand on it in a minute. This video is a direct continuation to the previous one, so I recommend you watching that one as well. Officially, there are no Season 9A and Season 9B. Those are the terms made up by the continuity, but I wanted to make them separate because of their qualities. And I'm just mixing in Season 10 to this video because it is so short. Season 10 and Season 9B kinda make like one season, so I thought it fits. I hope it all makes sense, and let's dive right into it. Lost in Bikini Bottom. I remember when this first premiered. It was summer 2015, I was having a holiday abroad, was about to start high school, I was genuinely excited for life. The New Horizons satellite just reached Pluto and sent first high quality images of it. That was genuinely one of the best eras of my personal life. And then new episodes of SpongeBob were about to air, especially that the second movie was great. A lot of old writers and producers were back to work on new episodes, including Steven Hillenburg himself being back as an executive producer, Kaz returning to write episodes, as well as we got an entirely new writer, Jack Pendarvis, who, spoiler alert, wrote some of the biggest bangers of Season 9B. But is Lost in Bikini Bottom one of them? It absolutely is. Okay, so as I mentioned before, everything in my life was great at the time. I have so much nostalgia and, dare I say, bias for that time. But on top of that, the episode didn't only feel like a breath of fresh air after Seasons 8, 9A and 7, but like an entire hurricane of fresh air. We are being greeted with funny jokes and scenes right from the beginning. The overall atmosphere and the vibes are just so positive and energetic. Even the very beginning with the sunrise and all indicates that it's a birth of a new era. And all of those mentioned above, I think, are fair enough to put this episode into S tier, just because this is the door to a new and much better era of SpongeBob. The renaissance, so to speak. And there's a lot more good stuff to come. But okay, bias aside, this episode has some weak points. Like SpongeBob creates this problem out of nowhere and behaves a little bit annoying. I guess the counter-argument for this could be that we get a brand new fantastic location, all that abandoned portion of Bikini Bottom looks great, and we get some viable lessons that we should look for landmarks and stuff to help us navigate in a new place. All those locations SpongeBob ventures to are really great looking. Another weak point of the episode is the ending kinda feels like a filler, especially last 2 minutes, but it doesn't matter. It's so energetic and so much different from the previous seasons that I'm gonna let it slide. Not to mention a lot of music is back, like Hawaiian Breeze or Steel Licks. I apologize if there is way too much bias on it from my side. Maybe otherwise this episode would land in A tier if I wasn't too stubborn, but you cannot deny that this episode has changed SpongeBob forever, and for the better. This is an important point on the timeline. Tudor sauce. SpongeBob and Krabs have an excellent relation here. This is one of the better examples of their father-son relationships. Even though still Mr. Krabs has some greedy moments. But hey, this is his character, although thankfully not taken to any extremes. I would even argue that this is one of the best appearances of him ever. Again, thanks to Season 9B for restoring the behaviors of characters. He even casually gives money to Pearl, which shocked me on my first watch. Overall, I think this episode goes to the A tier. Honestly, the single biggest issue is just SpongeBob repetitively crashing into Krusty Krab. But don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of small things that make the watch experience great, like Mr. Krabs counting all the damage costs and trying to diversify the lessons. And overall, the energetic atmosphere just makes the episode less boring. Squid Plus One. This episode is just pure fun. This episode seems minimalistic, but it nails it. And it shows that kind of problem everyone could have at some point. Everything here just clicks together. All interactions between Squidward and people. The atmosphere is just pretty much in every scene. Even SpongeBob, his behavior may seem creepy at first, but if you think about it, he just foreshadows what will eventually come. And he is the one who helps Squidward at the end of the day. Besides, he doesn't really have that much screen time, and I adore his childish behavior. This is an S-tier episode. As I mentioned, I love how Squidward tries to bond with Morton and then with Larry, and how he ultimately ends up with his own reflection. That was just hilarious. This episode is just a pure definition of enjoyable from start to finish. The executive treatment. Well, I wish I could also say that about this episode as well. Maybe I can. This is actually enjoyable, just on a smaller scale. It's mostly joking about business industry with Patrick of all people, and it's cool. That's how can I describe it. It's somewhat entertaining, but nothing really amazing. It will go to an A tier. Still, there is nothing bad, and the episode overall is charming. The idea itself is pretty interesting to watch and unique, but on the other hand, you get that montage of Patrick doing that business stuff, and you are just eh. The ending with Patrick in jail and the escape was funny though. Company picnic. This episode is just pure fun, start to finish. All the interactions between the Krusty crew, SpongeBob getting the idea of company picnic, the little burger family was adorable. How, of course, Mr. Krabs was just a cheapskate. But even in those conditions, it was so fun to see them having a good time. And when Plankton comes to pay a visit, he only makes it more fun. More interesting visuals and more entertainment. Even Squidward started to have more fun. I also find it funny how Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob first wanted to stay within their own company picnic, only to jump straight into Plankton's one. It's S tier. As I already said, this episode is just pure fun from start to finish. There is so much positive energy. The ending may seem a bit rushed and having no sense, but it doesn't matter. I'm absolutely not bothered by it, since the whole thing made me smile and laugh. Pull up a barrel. Can we first appreciate the atmosphere they created? Some rain, enclosed space, some dim light from a candle. This is just enough to make it special. But anyway, Mr. Krabs' story is amazing. My only little nitpick is that he uses the main cast for his story, but on the other hand, I think I prefer them over some random fish. Although his buddies from the Navy would make more sense. But anyway, not a big deal. It's beyond obvious that this episode is an S tier. Funny how Mr. Krabs was cooking delicious meals only to be forced to make some terrible ones, only to jump back into making delicious ones again. And then later the escape from prison and the fight with pirates. Both the whole plot and the individual scenes were beautifully written. A lot of action and great moments. Again, it's another episode that's just pure entertainment. Sanctuary. This episode is pretty awesome. They made snails look cute. That's an achievement, I guess. Well, at least for the first few minutes, before it really becomes overwhelming. But on the other hand, SpongeBob's slow descent into madness was awesome. And Squidward's allergy is pretty funny as well. Although I wonder why SpongeBob agreed to do all this. He kinda brought it all to himself unnecessarily. He could have said no, but I guess if he did so, we wouldn't have this episode. Which, by the way, I'm putting in S tier. I love how serious this problem becomes. And Squidward takes legal actions against SpongeBob. And as I said, SpongeBob slowly becoming crazy and separating from the outside world was awesome. And the very ending is so extremely adorable. Although Bob says all the snails escaped his center, they didn't. We've seen many people bringing their snails to SpongeBob, so I guess just some of them escaped his center. What's eating Patrick? This episode is really cool. It makes sense that Patrick would be the best candidate for the Krabby Patty eating competition, given how we've seen so many times how quickly he can eat stuff, and it kinda makes sense that for once he wouldn't like to devour the food for the price of not enjoying the taste. So that whole training montage with him was really cool. You know what? I was debating which tier would be the best for this episode, but I've decided I'll put it in S tier. But that's really generous. To me personally, it's not as entertaining as some of the previous episodes, but there are so many great things that cannot be overlooked. Like overall Patrick's change of behavior and character and personality from the previous seasons. The competition itself being really awesome. And the fact that Patrick actually wins for Bikini Bottom. Lots of jokes and gags. And not to mention the great atmosphere. Patrick the Game. So this is one of the more infamous ones in Season 9B, because people say it's just about the characters playing a board game. but there's much more to it. They don't even start playing until halfway through the episode. The first half is just Patrick trying to create a game, which is really adorable. It seems like something all of us try to do when we were younger, taking some pieces of the game and mashing it together to make a different game. Who didn't like that sort of stuff? Honestly, the episode as a whole isn't really that very special or anything. It can go to the A tier. Even when they are playing the game, it's somewhat entertaining. They are clearly having fun. Doesn't matter that Patrick makes the rules on the go. The whole episode kinda makes me want to play board games with friends. Although Squidward is unnecessarily rude to Patrick, he kinda gets his comeuppance. Honestly, the more the episode goes on, the more entertaining it gets. Sewers of Bikini Bottom. This episode is kinda bizarre. It's like literally toilet humor done right. The sewers is an interesting place, especially that they expanded it with the sewer snake lore. And it's all connected to the different part of the plot with the stadium, although I can't help but imagine all that stink SpongeBob and Squidward go through. But if we take that aside, their adventure is really action-packed and energetic. I am putting this episode in S tier. It's so bizarre to see SpongeBob and Squidward enjoying flushing random stuff in the toilet, something that you absolutely should not be doing. And an entire stadium being named after the Krusty Krab? Nice. I guess the perfect words to describe this episode would be positive chaos, because so many fun and enjoyable things happen back to back. It really distracts me that they are in the sewers, literally swimming in the waste. Ooh. SpongeBob Long Pants. It is so cool. This is a properly executed version of 2 square pants or not 2. How change of his pants literally changes his whole character, and everything they do is brilliant. I'm not bothered by the fact that he becomes a bit snobbish. It's really minimal. It's so fun to see everyone's reactions to him, and he suddenly becomes successful in everything. It's hilarious, especially the joke with Mrs. Puff. It's just perfect. It's clearly an S tier episode. Another one that just doesn't fail with entertaining you. They put so much to this episode. And you know what? Maybe sometimes in those Season 9B episodes, they put too much stuff. But hey, I just complained about slow pace in the previous seasons, so it doesn't really matter. It's not an issue. Maybe because of that the ending's a bit rushed, but again, no complaining. Larry's Gym. Right off the bat, I noticed there is a similar thing like with the previous episode, that they put so many things into 11 minutes, which ultimately makes it look like it's a bit too busy. And there's so much going on, but again, it is not a problem. I enjoy everything. It is a perfect way to do a Larry-themed episode, and the gym theme works pretty well. It's easily an S tier episode. Everything is so fun. Mr. Krabs is easily the funniest character here, although his joke at the very end was so lazy and it's basically a repeat. SpongeBob getting huge was absolutely hilarious. I kinda felt bad for Larry, but again, I'm just repeating myself at this point, it's so entertaining. The Fishbowl. So I like science and I like watching people doing experiments. Pretty much most of the stuff I watch on YouTube is science related, so this episode had me hooked on immediately. And I must say, yes, the premise is really good. Although I find it weird that Sandy has lived in Bikini Bottom for so long and she has never studied any of the people? Wasn't that the whole point of her moving underwater? This episode lands in A tier. The scientific humor is really good. We even get some psychological facts. As I mentioned, I love the experimenting and stuff. The fact that we are being taught some psychological tricks is neat, like the illusion of having more food in a smaller bowl or being under pressure when being on camera. Although my 2 complaints are that Patrick kinda becomes a jerk and Squidward acts unnaturally weird in regard to ice cream. Married to Money. So if you have watched my previous videos, you probably know what I'm gonna say here. And you are kinda right. We are going inside someone's relationship and there's some melodrama, how it affects children and stuff, and I am not a fan of this. And what's even worse, Mr. Krabs really does suffer from loneliness. And then he is so happy to finally find someone, only to being left heartbroken again. And this is sad. I guess I'll put this episode to C tier. If you like these kind of stories, that's cool. I don't like them. It doesn't really deserve a D tier, and that would be an overkill. And when Mr. Krabs is happy, that's nice to see. Overall, Plankton's plan wasn't the most original, and Mr. Krabs really wanting to marry a pile of cash and having feelings was kinda disturbing. Mulger Pearl. Alright, right off the bat, this episode is so refreshing solely because of the fact that there's almost no SpongeBob. It's mostly from Pearl perspective. Believe it or not, sometimes we do need these episodes when there is almost no SpongeBob and the whole thing is from someone else's perspective. I like when shows do that sometimes. Also, the whole thing takes place at a mall, which is another unique place. Not to mention, they did not miss the opportunity to put so many cameos here and references. And I love the design of the bottom floor. The episode can go to the A tier. I kind of feel bad for Pearl struggling to find a job and being laughed at by her peers. This is relatable, but the old lady was honestly kind of awesome. Props to her to support Pearl, and overall those two having a good time. I don't want to say that the granny turning out to be hardcore was predictable. It kinda was. The ending fight was cool. I'm not putting in S tier simply because of the granny humor. While it's kinda okay, it's just not in my top 5 favorite. Also, you know, the difference in generations. Always kinda annoying to listen to the complaints from the both sides. 2 thumbs down. Now this is an awesome episode. Plot revolving around giving thumbs up, it's a good plot. They did a really great job. Speaking of giving thumbs up, you should definitely like this video and subscribe to my channel, that would be really awesome. No pressure though. First half of the episode is so positive, with SpongeBob cheering everybody up. So much positive energy. And even later, the scene at the hospital has great joke melodrama, and later at SpongeBob's house, this time they made it pretty awesome. I like it. The episode goes straight to the S tier. It's a brilliantly executed, goofy idea that's also a metaphor to real-life problems when people get disabled, but they are able to recover. As well as the sword fight was really great between SpongeBob and Patrick. It's another one that's just entertaining from start to finish. Sharks versus Pods. Alright, this episode is cool. Like, I'm not usually interested in gangs, but they made this episode to be pretty nice. I like how SpongeBob doesn't fully appreciate the gang, heck, I wouldn't, but seriously, their music, the style, the atmosphere, it's all so great. Another one that is not surprised that it goes to the S tier. It's way too cool to be overlooked, even if later it is revealed that they are just competitors in dancing and it's all a misunderstanding. The dance montages were really awesome too. This episode is just so great, and not to mention it takes place at night. Copy Bob Ditto Pants. Alright, this is a better and much funnier approach to the Plankton trying to steal the formula idea. Sometimes I forgot that was the plan here. It's just that funny. And there's another hilarious subplot of Squidward thinking this is a dream. Another one that goes straight to the S tier. There isn't too much to say really. Plankton fails in a funny way because he used a cheap toner. That's kind of clever. Sponge clones are pretty funny, I guess, and how they are fading away. Overall, it's a pretty well written and charming episode. Even the ending, despite feeling a bit fillery. Sold. Dang, this is really one of the best and the funniest episodes, not only in 9B, but the whole franchise. Squidward honestly kinda gets his comeuppance for lying, but that was to be deserved. As I said, they made it in one of the most funny ways possible. This is why I don't really feel bad for him. It's another episode that just automatically goes in the S tier. The idea of Squidward pretending to be the new house owners, he told SpongeBob and Patrick that they moved to the houses, was hilarious. I also liked their little trash house from earlier and how Squidward was happy without his neighbors, at least for a few minutes. And the general paranoia. Again, not too much to say, you just need to watch it. Overall, another great 9B episode. Lame and Fortune. You know what? Sometimes I forget this episode exists. I've been watching every season 9B episode when it premiered, but this one is just kind of forgettable. The fortune cookies becoming true is not the most original plot. At least they gave it some SpongeBob twists, like Plankton trying to use them for his advantage. Some of the stuff he wrote was just plain funny, like literally, "You stink." So this is where the episode started to get really funny. And they literally mentioned death and that whole funeral scene. It was bizarre in a positive way. I'm putting this episode in A tier. Majority of the stuff is just alright. Some of the moments and scenes were hilarious, but majority is just kinda average. The last quarter of the episode, when Plankton tries to get the formula from the sea of fish, was nice. Overall, it doesn't quite cut it to the S tier. Goodbye Krabby Patty? Yeah, that title is kind of a joke. I honestly prefer Factory Fresh. They should have kept that instead of that clickbaity title. That's something I agree with, but whatever. The episode is honestly outstanding, exaggerating the goods and the bads about the industry. They made it in such a good way, and this story about SpongeBob's and Patrick's friendship was so adorable, how it was kinda ruined, but they got back together. S tier is a given. The episode itself is great on so many levels. The idea of making a literal factory to sell frozen Krabby Patties works so well. It just fits. I enjoy all the business-related humor and how the original Krusty Krab turned into a museum and all that Patrick merchandise they had. Also, I don't know why, but I love those replacement robots. Sandy's Nightmare. This episode gives us a pretty good lesson that we shouldn't overproduce anything. Overproduction from just a single source is never great, and there should be a balance between supply and demand. Sandy's tree shows it to us excellently. It's heartbreaking to see the tree dying. Obviously it's exaggerated, but hey, we only have 11 minutes. I think this episode deserves an S tier. This problem can be easily applied to people, especially when you are self-employed or something. It gives us a lesson that we will just burn out if we don't find a balance between production and our own private life. And besides that, there's a lot of cool things about this episode, like the shaman and his stories, people appreciating Sandy's work, and SpongeBob genuinely being worried about the situation. Bulletin board. Man, this is a great way to put a social media thing in SpongeBob universe. Despite us living in the 21st century, putting literal internet and smartphones and website into a SpongeBob universe would still look weird. So a Coke board is one of the best things to substitute it with. It doesn't mean they can't put any social media humor into this episode. Of course they can. My favorite part was when the hate notes started appearing and people were calling Patrick a hero for speaking his opinions. This episode is easily an S tier. Patrick and other people's notes really show us how pressure on social media can be harmful, and even if people have good premise, they can easily get misinterpreted, and accidentally cause commotion. I also enjoy the part when a guy was not happy with Mr. Krabs' censorship. This episode truly says a lot about our society. I also love that scene where Mr. Krabs just destroyed everything. Food Gone Castaways. Oh boy, believe or not, this is a season 9B episode I'm really not a fan of. Well, maybe besides Married to Money. This episode is really flawed. Like, the first third of the episode is just filler, with them being on a road trip, and honestly being just annoying. Everybody seems out of character here. Especially when Mr. Krabs forces SpongeBob and Patrick to tug the trailer, and once they arrive to the jungle, there's just more predictable stuff. Big monsters, characters going crazy, and them trying not to eat the Krabby Patty, and not doing anything to escape the situation. And of course, after SpongeBob makes the nature patties, they win the food con. Unfortunately, this episode will get to the D tier. Honestly, it's so disappointing after having so many great episodes. We get a frustrating blend of cliches and predictability and annoyance and characters being out of character. It's honestly so bad. Snail Mail. After that disastrous episode we just had, now this is back on track with Season 9B Classics. The beginning is adorable, how SpongeBob started panicking after realizing what he's done and honestly tried to cheer his pen pal up. It's just so wholesome. This episode goes to the S tier. As I said, the first 2/3 were fun, but the flying montage itself is easily the most entertaining part. Another one that my words just cannot describe. You just need to watch it and feel the action yourself. The episode nicely ties together everything that happens. Pineapple Invasion. So it's another Plankton trying to steal the formula plot with a twist. This time the twist is SpongeBob hiding the formula in his house and Plankton just searching his house. That's pretty much the entire plot. And most of it is what you would expect. First, Gary not letting Plankton in, and then he needs to avoid all the obstacles and stuff. And you know what? I think I'll put it in a very low and generous S tier. But there are funny moments too, like the beginning is hardcore. He literally used a skunk. I initially wanted to put it in the A tier, but the scene in Gary's shell and the fact that he was hallucinating made it all that more hilarious. So it just barely made it to the S tier. Salsa Imbecilicus. Alright, I must admit, this is a guilty pleasure of mine. I remember when I first watched this episode when it premiered, and I was just laughing so much. All these people being so dumb and literally doing the jokes for like 2 minutes. And I really appreciate the idea of reteaching the entire city. I know people have problems with this episode, The biggest one is Patrick himself. He's just too dumb. They made him really brainless here. Like, not even Patrick behaves like that. And I understand this. But on the other hand, this is like the only major problem. If it wasn't Patrick, but like Plankton screwing the Salsa Imbecilicus up, there would be zero issue. I'll put this episode in A tier. Do you remember from my previous videos that I love dumb humor? This is a perfect example. And as I said, the idea of Karen and Sandy schooling everybody is great. I love it, and I understand why you may disagree with the setup, but stop being so harsh. Mutiny on the Krusty. Well, we get another episode where someone is severely out of character. Season 9B was so good with character development. Well, maybe Mr. Krabs is not completely out of his character, but his behavior is definitely over-exaggerated. But besides that, the whole adventure they go through is great. Swimming through the rip current, the jungle, all the new designs of the customers, they're great. I love it. But I'm still only gonna put it in A tier. Despite all the grades, Mr. Krabs' behavior really drags it down. Despite him being a tyrant, his battle with the monster was cool. It's definitely not all that bad. The whole tooth. This episode is kinda painful at the beginning. Toothache is no joke, it really hurts. But it quickly turns out the other way and becomes adorable. And they make a lot of jokes about the situation. And honestly, it does deserve an S tier. It really is a cute story, and the ending with the Tooth Fairy was so sweet. That scene, combined with slightly low-pitched Hawaiian train, almost makes you cry. I'm shocked that they managed to make such a heartwarming story. It fits so much as an ending of Season 9B because this really is a unique, one-of-a-kind eras of SpongeBob. Okay, so Season 9B, and by extension the whole Season 9, is done. I can't wait to see what the numbers say. So in Season 9B, we had 29 segments, and 19 of those segments were in S tier, which is 65.5%, 8 episodes in A tier, which is 27.5%, 0 episodes in B tier, and then 1 episode in C and D tiers, which is 3.5%. Maximum available score for Season 9B was 145, and the score it got is 130, which is 89.6%, which makes it go to the S tier. So I'm just gonna quickly remind you of Season 9A statistics. 6 episodes in S tier, 4 episodes in A tier, 5 episodes in B tier, 2 episodes in C tier, and 3 episodes in D tier, which was a B tier. And now Season 9 as a whole is. We had 49 episodes. 25 of them are in S tier, which is 51%. 12 are in A tier, which is 24.4%. 5 episodes in B tier, which is 10.2%. 3 episodes in C tier, which is 6.1%. And 4 episodes in D tier, which is 8.1%. Maximum available score for Season 9 was 245, and the score is 198, which is 80.1%. Which makes it go to the A tier, which is just slightly higher than Season 8. Curse you, Season 9A, but Season 9B on itself, it's just slightly lower than Seasons 2 and 3. And yes, honestly, it shows you how much of an improvement Season 9B is over the previous ones. And I've said enough times how much of an improvement it is in the episode reviews. So before we compare the statistics to other seasons, let's jump to Season 10. Season 10 is just weird. It had the number of episodes shortened to 11 instead of 13, like a true half season would have. But I guess it better complements Season 9B, which had slightly more than half. They really almost make a complete full season, which technically is not correct. Season 10 is much more different than Season 9B. The writing style has changed to be way more cartoonish, animation is now much more expressive, which at the time was an excuse for people to call it bad. Like, we have wacky faces now, so it's all bad. And people just didn't care about any of the good qualities. I admit it, I also had a problem at the beginning with the more expressive animation, but it grew up on me. So I guess I need to do some defending now for Season 10. Unless it will become jarring, then I'm gonna mention it. Whirly brains. So I like drones. By the way, I've done some drone videos myself, they are on my channel if you wanna watch them. And honestly, I think this is the best usage for drones, as sometimes the footage can be amazing. Even if you don't have a camera, just flying for fun can be fun too. But given how SpongeBob and Patrick can see everything from above, I understand how fun it must be. And this is what makes this episode amazing, cause at least I understand that. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna put this episode in S tier. As I said, it's so fun to see SpongeBob and others have fun with drones. Additionally, it is a great way to start a season with aforementioned new expressive animation. It is really hyper and fun. And that conflict at the very end with the old man, it's understandable. The fact that they literally fly with their own brains is bizarre. And the scene where Patrick slowly becomes crazy. But I like it. It's not the highest S tier though, because there are some issues, like their empty sockets can feel disturbing at times, and Patrick literally putting the diaper in his head was just gross, and there's no way around it. Mermaid pants. So it's understandable that they're not gonna bring back Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy due to their voice actors' deaths, but it's cool that they try to substitute them with SpongeBob and Patrick acting like heroes. Honestly, it's always amusing to see them having those hero-like adventures. I am putting this one to S tier as well. Their behaviors are not annoying, and I also was shocked when Mr. Krabs and Squidward just joined them and had fun together. This episode is so funny and entertaining, and I absolutely love the Krusty Liar, and when Squidward became a true villain. Unreal Estate. So I must say, Squidward had a brilliant idea with making SpongeBob thinks he's allergic to his home. It works so well, the episode feels so original, and is fun despite having a simple plot. I'm putting it in S tier as well. All of these houses, as well as the whole adventure to find a house, was so awesome. As well as the fact that Squidward ultimately loved the last one, which turned out to be a rocket. This episode is incredibly funny. The ending is as well. It feels like everything has come the full circle and is kinda reminiscent to one of the other brilliant episodes, Sold. Code Yellow. So this might sound a bit surprising, I'm not the biggest fan of this episode. As much as I don't like to say that about new seasons after the second movie, but SpongeBob is really annoying here. Not only to Squidward, but to everybody really. Playing the doctor is so predictable. SpongeBob will obviously be able to magically cure everybody and quickly become a professional and a favorite of everybody. This episode goes to the B tier. I'm not gonna put it into C or D tiers because we do get some genuinely funny moments, and the whole episode takes place in a unique location, a hospital, so that's neat. And the whole Squidward's nose surgery was fantastically written and animated. It is the highlight of the episode, rather than that obnoxious first half. That saves it from the lower tiers. Mimic Madness. Oh gosh, this episode is so overrated. Just kidding. I agree, this is pretty great, but still not the most fantastic one in the series. SpongeBob has done so many impressions in the past and will do in the future, so why a whole episode based on it is supposed to be so special? I mean, it does look and sound great. Tom Kenny is really being praised for this. But why really? This isn't anything new. Okay, but enough negativity. This episode lands in the S tier. Those impressions are funny, it's amusing when SpongeBob does them, but the best thing is no doubt the ending. The song is beautiful, and I love the solution that people must imitate SpongeBob in order to get him back to normal. And how Plankton almost got the formula, but maybe it's still a tiny bit overrated. Housewarming. So I do not really know what to think of this. I love the techno music, and I kinda felt bad for the worm. This plot may not be super original, and those worms kinda look gross at times. I like the idea that they literally made a house out of SpongeBob, and decided to play techno music of all things. But I wish we got more of it. Instead, we get a short episode within an episode, that I do not really care about. So I guess the episode balances out to be just average. So B tier. And I also kinda like the solution that SpongeBob's laugh is what gets rid of the worms. Snooze, you lose. So this is another one that I'm slightly conflicted about, because the beginning was adorable. I can kinda relate to Squidward, not with having trouble falling asleep, but wanting to go to sleep where I cannot. Like, for example, after work I have stuff to do, or when I just didn't sleep at all. So all the beginning scenes are sweet. But then the episode takes a turn with the new season 10 animation style. I need to admit, this is like the first instance where this is a bit overdone. But the episode was still pretty entertaining nonetheless. It will go to A tier. I honestly like how SpongeBob and Patrick control Squidward and all that mayhem they cause. Too bad everything falls apart at the ending, but I also really love that monster Squidward they have created in the lab. Overall, it's enjoyable. Krusty catering. So unfortunately, I need to say unfortunately again, as this episode also goes to the annoying side of things, especially at the beginning with the children. That whole thing was so loud that my head started to hurt. Not to mention, one kid sticks around throughout the entire episode. Fortunately, however, the episode does get a bit better in the mansion, and they sprinkle in some of the rich people humor, but there isn't much of it. Patrick starts rampaging out of the blue, but it's cool to see everybody enjoying something in the mansion. The episode lands in C tier. By far, the best thing about this episode was the chaos, how it tied together, and the destruction of everything at the very end. And as I said, the mansion was kinda cool, but there's just so much annoying stuff here. It makes the payoff much less appreciated. SpongeBob's Place. So this is another episode I'm conflicted on. On one hand, I don't think this episode should really exist, mainly because we had dozens of episodes that praise SpongeBob and Krabby Patties, so why making an entire episode about it? This is just redundant. I'm always open to new things, and I'm expecting some new SpongeBob twists. On the other hand, I guess this episode has some funny moments and energy, especially with Mr. Krabs, how he tried to stop everybody from going outside. I'm honestly considering this episode to be just average, so it goes to the B tier. It's always fun to see SpongeBob have success in many different places, including his home, and I felt bad for Mr. Krabs, but we also get some SpongeBob cliches, like he instantly gets rich, no one else can cook Krabby Patties, and also some filler with Squidward singing, but I guess it sets up the joke of the place being haunted. This episode isn't obnoxious or anything, it's harmless, it just doesn't bring anything new to the table. I guess that Mr. Krabs merging Krusty Krab and SpongeBob Place was really cute. Plankton gets the boot. So this is another Plankton and Karen relationship episode. We had some really good ones in the past, so does this one hold up? Well, I need to agree, Plankton is kind of a jerk here, bigger than usual. I liked when he had some great time with SpongeBob and that he wants to help him. I think this episode can go to the A tier. I genuinely like those being nice lessons and the makeovers. And overall that Plankton wants Karen back. And his silly plan actually worked. So yeah, this episode does hold up to the other ones, despite not feeling as serious. It is more silly, but in a good way. I rewatched this for the first time in a while and it was honestly way better than I remembered. Life insurance. Alright, so honestly, we are back with the pure silliness and energy, and that it takes place mostly in SpongeBob's front yard, which, to be fair, it's kinda rare in season 10. We haven't been here for a while. Most of the locations up to this point were unique, which is good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Honestly, this plot is perfect for a cartoon episode. Life insurance literally giving invincibility. It does feel like something from a classic cartoon. It became especially funny when Squidward thought he was immortal. Honestly, this is a S-tier episode. Okay, so maybe the beginning was a bit annoying with the yellings, but the rest really makes it up for it. I also enjoy the scene of the sushi maker and how Mr. Krabs wanted to get the life insurance money for himself. Everything was hilarious. Burst your bubble. So I'm kinda shocked to see this episode. It's a fresh take on SpongeBob's boating license problem, and it uses his ability to blow bubbles and it connects them together very nicely. That seems like something they should have done years ago. I can't express enough how much I love this concept. And the episode itself, it's S tier, and it only keeps getting better, since it actually does sound like a more efficient, fun and green way to drive, at least in SpongeBob universe, and how him, as well as everybody, are really happy with this idea. And the roles are being reversed again, with SpongeBob being Mrs. Puff's teacher. It eventually all becomes chaos, but, well, we had to fit it within 11 minutes, right? But it was honestly a cool way to end this episode. Plankton retires, so we are back to having problems with episodes, and this right here has a lot of them. Let's start from the beginning. So I agree that we do need some sort of a setup, a compilation of Plankton's failures, but it takes too long. Almost a third of the episode. It should have been much quicker. Then only the second third of the episode is about the actual retiring, and I don't really have much problems with that. It has some funny moments, especially Plankton's outfit, but again, it doesn't last too long. And the few final minutes are just awful. It's just filler. Turns out these were all robots, which is just so lazy. I'm putting this one to the C tier. It was honestly disappointing to see. Unfortunately, most of this episode, especially last minutes, are just lazy writing and filler. And I'm afraid quite a few episodes of season 10 are like that. If you think about it, the whole season is kinda like a filler. But after squeezing all of the good bits, it doesn't really deserve that D tier, but it's pretty close. Not to mention, everything was predictable from the very beginning. You knew Plankton will not gonna retire, and that was just another of his schemes. Trident Trouble. Right off the bat, props for the unique title card. It's awesome, they should do more stuff like that. But to the episode itself, it has a lot of positive energy. I enjoy the plot, giving SpongeBob the superpowers of Neptune's trident. The Greek chorus is a neat idea, but I constantly forget they are in this episode until they show up. I guess they fit thematically to the episode of the Greek lore. It is S tier. There's a lot of energy, as I said. Everything is entertaining, very unique. We get a lot of action. This episode does everything right, honestly. Not to mention, it's incredibly funny. The Incredible Shrinking Sponge. And right after the previous one, we get another one with a unique plot that I'm surprised hasn't been done before in that way. And it makes sense how SpongeBob has got himself to be so tiny due to exposure to high temperatures. And all that tiny humor they put into it really works, as well as the solution to make him bigger. It also makes sense, by using soap and water. No wonder this episode goes to the S tier. Again, almost everything is done correctly. I am not bothered by anything, not even the hygiene service. And I find Plankton finding out that he is a bit taller than SpongeBob to be hilarious. To me, it's just another great plot. Sports? First, I thought it's a bit peculiar for SpongeBob not to have any sports in the series, but now that I think about it, there aren't really a lot of sports. Or maybe there are and I just cannot remember, because honestly I can't remember any. I know there was baseball sometimes. It doesn't matter. Let's just stick with the fact that the sports are rare. They again made this episode really original and unique. SpongeBob and Patrick trying to figure out what all these things do was pretty funny. That's also an episode where Squidder has an upper hand and he has the most fun. S tier for this episode, as it honestly keeps getting better. Especially later on the pitch where Squidder and Sandy have the competition. And if you think SpongeBob and Patrick get hurt a bit too much here, think of every time SpongeBob and Patrick hurt somebody. Sometimes it's okay to see them getting hurt. And the ending was very cool. Everybody won. Whee! The Getaway. So I wouldn't call this episode the most original, but on the other hand, I don't want to call it straight predictable, but I think you know what I mean. It's just kind of another stock plot, and as with all these stock plots being reused, I don't want to automatically call them bad. So I'm gonna put this one in A tier. We get a lot of SpongeBob twists and humor here, and in general it was pretty funny. Even Mrs. Puff getting a crush on that getaway driver didn't bother me, and actually gave a good counterbalance to the more annoying side of SpongeBob. And the episode takes place at night. And SpongeBob and the criminal do have some funny scenes, and somewhat of a good time together. Another pretty entertaining episode. Lost and Found. Honestly, this episode is amazing. Due to the Lost and Found itself, I absolutely dig the idea of a huge cave filled with shelves and all those toys and gadgets and whatnot. Not to mention there are a lot of Easter eggs and references on the shelves, giving this episode much more rewatchability. So every time you watch the episode you can discover something new. Again, the episode just keeps getting better. There's that dark aura surrounding it. SpongeBob gets lost. Those old people were lost children. They spent like, I don't know, 60 years down there. This is so morbid and dark, but I love it. Not a surprise that it goes to the absolute top shelf of the S tier. Those chase scenes are goofy in a positive way, all the visuals are awesome, there are all those little jokes like lost dead ends, how Mr. Krabs accepts that SpongeBob and Squidward are just gone forever, and they even managed to make a wholesome and heartwarming ending that is also equally pretty dark. Yeah, there's also that crying kid, yeah, he's also here. Patrick's coupon. Sometimes I forget how great some of the episodes are. I haven't seen them in a bit, and now I'm rewatching these episodes for these videos, and they're honestly great. I wasn't really thinking much of this episode before rewatching, but it is so funny. I'm putting it in S tier. Everything from the beginning to finish was surprisingly positive because how it blends together so well with the overall entertainment value. Like the beginning fight with the sea spider pays off at the end when Patrick was fighting the Ice Cream King, which by the way was the absolute funniest part of the episode, but I loved everything else nonetheless. It was cute for Patrick that he was doing all of this just for SpongeBob, and all these scenes when he was paranoid were just so incredibly hilarious. Out of the picture. Wow, we just had a dark concept, now onto another one. Mr. Krabs literally trying to get rid of Squidward. Although that art thing that it becomes more expensive after the author's death makes sense. I honestly just must put it into S tier. The concept is hardcore, and not only that, everything in this episode is great. Like the locations. We literally go to rock bottom. This is the most nostalgic episode of season 1. It's so great to see it back. And we also go to Mars, which is always welcome. SpongeBob really is supporting Squidward in his journeys, and the ending where they just straight up destroy everything was also pure fun. Feral Friends. Dang. This is the most unique episode of the franchise, and it makes so much sense too. I have trouble describing all of this. Seeing all the characters in their real life forms and acting natural is just bizarre. And then Sandy's having all of them in an aquarium, and we are being taught lessons about them. People who come up with these ideas, I gotta say thank you for all of this, since it's so great to see all of this in a SpongeBob episode. It's obviously an S tier episode. The French narrator is an actual character, and the designs of all people in their primitive forms, the action and suspense in general, it's all so awesome, but the episode is not without its flaws. Like the CGI in patchy segments is a bit rough, but later he also gets transformed into a primitive form along with Putty, so I guess it all balances out, and it's not really that big of an issue. And it also makes sense. Basically, since the beginning till the very ending, the episode is just awesome. Don't Wake Patrick. Well, it's sad to say, but since the previous one was 15 minutes and this one is 7 minutes, and also literally the last segment of the season, it's pretty obvious that they just needed some filler, just to fill that last remaining space. So yeah, this isn't really an original plot. We have seen stuff like this in other shows, but again, I don't strictly want to call it cliché. It will land in a C tier. It's pretty harmless, doesn't do anything bad. We get some SpongeBob twists here, but yeah, it is clearly just some filler. Well, I'm not saying it's not entertaining. There is some entertaining here, and it's a cute concept in general, and it takes place at night, and as you know, in my book, that's always appreciated. Alright, so we had two relatively short rides combined into a bigger one. Let's see those numbers real quick. So there are 13 episodes in S tier, which is 59%, and then A, B and C tiers have 3 episodes, which are all 13%, and there's 0 episodes in D tier. So the maximum score was 110, and season 10 scored 92, which is 83.6%, which makes it go to the A tier. Honestly, I don't really have much of final thoughts. I pretty much said everything in the episode reviews. All that I can say is just those episodes are really fresh and honestly really good. Rewatching all these episodes for this video was so nostalgic and so great. 2015 to 2017 were honestly great times. But there are much more great things to come in season 11. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Leave a like and subscribe, and see you everybody in the next one.